So I used to think that marketing was just about crafting a good message, putting it in front of the right person, and boom, job done, product sold. Then I started working in B2B marketing. And it turns out it can be a little bit more complicated. In my first year in B2B marketing, I learned 3 huge lessons that changed my approach to everything, from email to content to messaging. And today, I'm going to walk you through all 3 lessons. Plus, I'll be giving you a little tool that helps you simplify the most important part, communicating with your leads consistently and strategically. Hi everyone and welcome. I'm Melissa from Zero to B2B. I've worked in B2B marketing for Fortune 500 companies like Amazon, Meta, Microsoft, and a whole bunch of others for the past decade. And what I've learned is that small businesses and entrepreneurs can absolutely use the same strategies that those big companies use. In fact, they can sometimes do them quite a bit better. But like many people in the marketing industry, I started out in B2C and then moved to B2B. If you're not familiar with those two terms, B2C stands for business to consumer. And that's when a business is selling directly to a single human being. B2B, on the other hand, stands for business to business. And that means that one business is selling services or products to another business. So let's get into those 3 big lessons that changed my strategy and how they can change yours too. The first big lesson in B2B is that you are not just talking to one person. In B2B, there is almost always a buyer group involved. That means that multiple people are involved in the decision to buy, and typically they care about completely different things. According to Infuse Insights Voice of the Buyer 2025 research, the average buyer group consists of 4 to 10 people. A general rule of thumb is that the more complex or expensive your offer is, the larger the buyer group is going to be, and the longer the sales cycle. Let's take a look at this scale to understand a little bit more. On one end, you've got an offering that's something like a pencil. Offices need pencils, right? And the buying group that is involved in the purchase of that pencil is probably just one person. Now, they may have input from others, but they're the one that's ultimately going to click buy and add them to the cart, and it's probably your office manager. On the other end of the spectrum are more complicated products. Think of things like cybersecurity protection or software or a bespoke solution that is custom made for a particular company. When you're selling that kind of complex solution that is also at a very high price point, that's when you're looking at 10 plus stakeholders making that buying decision. Individuals from procurement, legal, finance, IT, all of these different people need to come together and agree on the way to move forward. When I first realized this, it clicked so hard. Of course, the messaging wasn't landing. I was speaking to one person, but 3 other people had a say in whether or not to move forward. At the time, I was working with a very large tech company that shall remain nameless. Our marketing efforts were targeting someone called the ITDM, or IT decision maker. But when we heard back from sales about the quality of leads that we were passing over, we heard that while the product was super popular with ITDMs, that they didn't know how to relay the value story to their finance people. And so the sale would sort of stop there because we didn't have the right messaging or the right materials to enable our salespeople to have that financially based conversation. At least not yet. It was something that we had to change, and we did change very, very fast. Once we started crafting messages that spoke to all of the roles for all of the decision makers involved, our conversion rates went up like crazy. Let me give you an example using my go-to fake company that I keep changing the name of, but whatever, they always do the same thing. This company is called EcoBloom, and what they do is provide plants and plant care services for corporate offices. At EcoBloom, our primary contact is Office Olivia. She's the office manager. But Olivia isn't the only person making this decision. Here's the rest of the buyer group. So first we have Olivia. What she cares about most is making the office feel welcoming and vibrant. She wants to improve morale, and she needs to stay within budget. Then we have her boss, who's the COO, Chief Operating Officer, named Corinne. She cares about the ROI. So for her, it's not just about staying in budget, but that budget is money well spent. She wants to see how it directly impacts customer perception as well as improves productivity and employee morale. Next up, we've got Finance Fiona. She's from the finance department, and so what she's really paying attention to are the nitty-gritty financial details. So she wants to know what is the exact cost and what exactly it covers. Are there any additional charges that she should anticipate? She wants to know what the contract length is. So how long are they going to be committed to this service? And she's also concerned about the billing structure. How often does she need to pay? Finally, we have custodian Carl. Carl cares a lot about who is maintaining these plants and whether or not they're going to mess with his schedule. How do they get access to the building? When are they going to be there? And are they going to perform their duties in a cleanly way with minor disruption to those around them? So even though Olivia is your in and your primary contact person, and even though she might love your service, she likely has to get sign off from at least a couple other people in order to say yes. If your messaging only talks about ambiance and aesthetics, you're going to lose COO Corinne and Finance Fiona, who need logic, ROI, and clear outcomes. The takeaway here is that your messaging has to cover it all. Not every piece of content has to cover all of it, but you need content out there that covers every single one of these topics so that you can satisfy each member of the buyer group. Lesson number 2 is that the buyer journey really matters. As a marketing pro who's spent some time in the field, I often hear this phrase: marketing is about reaching the right buyer with the right message at the right time. It sounds great, right? It's not wrong. But the big question is, how do you actually do that? Unfortunately, many marketing professionals can't answer that question. They don't have a methodology to get to an answer, but I'm here to tell you exactly how to do it. It has to do with the buyer journey. A buyer journey just breaks down the logical and emotional steps that a buyer has to go through to get from knowing they have a problem to buying your solution. In B2B, sometimes these can have multiple stages. In B2C, the buyer journey isn't often as complex as in B2B and can be much shorter and more straightforward. But in B2B, I would say that there are at least 5 steps to most buyer journeys, and some which require even more. Again, this usually ties back to the complexity of the solution you're trying to sell. Here's what a very basic B2B buyer journey looks like. First is awareness, and this is where your customer realizes that they have a problem. In the next stage, consideration, they're exploring solutions to that problem. In decision, they're comparing solutions against one another to make a final call about what to buy. In experience, they've bought the product and are using it or learning how to use it. And finally, in loyalty, hopefully they've gotten to a point where they've used the product, like it, and become an advocate for the product and the brand. It sounds a little complex and theoretical, but each stage in this journey matters a lot. It requires different messaging, different content, and different CTAs. The way you talk to someone who's at the very beginning stages of realizing they have a problem is very different than the way you need to be talking to them when they're about to make a decision. If you talk about features too early, they bounce. And if you push too hard at the top of the funnel, they ghost you. I cannot tell you how many times I've seen big, famous companies go straight from, here's a web page about our product, to contact sales, and then wonder why they're not converting. I've used this analogy before, but I consider this to be sort of like walking into a first date and asking someone to marry you. If you have an awareness level webpage that's just introducing your product to the audience, then it is most likely too early to direct them to contact sales right away. It just puts most people off. The key is matching your content to the stage of the buyer journey. That's how we get to the right customer with the right message at the right time. Let's walk through an example buyer journey so you can understand. So we're just going to use that simple buyer journey I showed you before for 2 members of the EcoBloom buyer group: Office Olivia, the office manager, and COO Corinne, who is her boss. In the first stage, awareness, they realize they have a problem. So for Olivia, this could look like noticing morale is a little bit low, seeing that the office just feels kind of dull, or maybe hearing complaints from the sales team about how their office looks different from their competitors. So in this stage, Olivia might start Googling something like ways to make an office more inviting. But for COO Corinne, this looks a little bit different. She might visit a competitor who is beating them in the market and notice that their office is nicer. It just feels more welcoming. And she might spot that there's a lot of live greenery in the office that her office just doesn't have. What's most likely to happen in this scenario is that Corinne is going to reach out to Olivia and say, hey, have you ever worked with any office greenery companies? Do you know anything about them? Come back to me and let me know what something like that would cost, and if they think it's going to give us a good ROI. In stage 2, consideration, both of them are kind of exploring these options. Olivia might go out and find a whole bunch of information. Maybe it's about natural light, plants, office design. In her mind, likely the focus is on ease, pricing, and style. But she also knows that she has to loop in Corinne. Olivia might forward a few of her top vendors to Corinne for consideration. And in response, Corinne might say something like, well, what is the ROI of this? Can they prove to me that this really does increase sales, or that it increases employee productivity or retention? She might be a little bit more skeptical. So let's assume that EcoBloom's marketing materials are able to get them to that next stage in the journey, decision. In this phase, they're comparing specific solutions to ultimately make a decision to buy. In this phase, Olivia is likely doing the legwork to request quotes. She wants to review the vendor's service tiers so she understands exactly what's included. She also wants to understand what the maintenance schedule looks like, probably because she knows her good buddy Carl is going to really care about that. Finally, for herself, she wants something that's pretty plug and play. She does not have a lot of time to babysit this process and make sure that they deliver the services that they're promising. But to convince her boss, Corinne, Olivia might have to give her more. And that means that EcoBloom has to have that material ready to go for Olivia to access. Corinne wants to see real numbers. She needs to make financial decisions that use her budget wisely, that have a return on her investment. So she's looking for things like case studies with statistics around improved employee wellness or improved sales metrics. In this scenario, Corinne might ask Olivia for a one-pager that summarizes their top 3 vendors, and she'll want to see how they compare to each other on different aspects like service, ROI, and statistical results. So where is Olivia going to get that? She has to get it directly from EcoBloom. And if EcoBloom makes it really easy for her to find that information, it might be the thing that allows them to stand out against the other vendors that they're considering. So they're on the same journey. They're both trying to get to a point where they feel confident in the decision that they would make. But they're paying attention to 2 totally different things. And at the beginning of the journey, things that are really standing out to Olivia that she's searching for are things like ambiance and how to improve the visuals of the office environment. Whereas by the end, she needs to satisfy very specific questions for her boss in order to be able to say yes. That's what it means. So the takeaway here is that you need different content at different times throughout the buyer journey. A best practice is to map your content directly to the buyer journey and make sure that you can put a checkbox in every single stage for every single buyer in the buyer group. That's what it means to actually reach the right buyer with the right message at the right time. Lesson number 3, and that is how to manage all of this complexity. So what happens when you combine multiple buyers with multiple stages of a buyer journey? Well, friends, that is complexity, and a lot of it. And that's lesson number 3, that the way to manage that complexity is through automation and AI. Especially as small businesses and solopreneurs or entrepreneurs just getting going, you cannot possibly be everywhere all at once for all of those buyers. So you've got to get marketing automation to do it for you. And it does not have to be super complicated, especially not at first. The easiest way to get started is just to automate your email nurture sequence. If you're not familiar with the term email nurture sequence, don't sweat it. It's just a series of automated emails that help nurture your buyer to bring them forward in the buyer journey, to get them closer to making a buying decision. Your email nurture sequence should offer them actual value, all while helping them learn more about you and your product and get answers to questions that they might not be quite ready to talk to someone live about yet. And if you're not sure where to start building an email sequence, again, do not stress about this. I have a free resource that you can use. This is an email nurture sequence worksheet. It gives you a step-by-step template to build out a 5-touch email nurture sequence. And this is a sequence that not only feels good to receive, but builds real trust with your buyer. The link for that worksheet is in the description below. Let me show you how it works. The email nurture sequence is built around value delivery, not just funnel steps. Again, you want to provide value at every single turn for your buyer. Email number 1 is an autoresponder with an asset. In a previous video, I went over how to offer an attract asset, so you might want to check that out. I'll put the link in the description below and maybe link it up here if I can remember how. In the first email of your email nurture sequence, they get what they signed up for and they get it right away. The goal is to set expectations, meet expectations, and reinforce value. In email number 2, I recommend sharing a success story plus an item of value. So you could share a quick win or a transformation that you've achieved for your clients in the past and a tool to help them achieve that same kind of win or transformation. In email number 3, you can tell your why story, as well as provide another asset that's valuable. So you show your human side here, you connect emotionally, tell people why you're offering the service that you do, and give them a tip. And alongside that tip, give them a tool to help them actually act on it. Email number 4, you can focus on an industry insight. So something that is either a trend or a known proof point within your industry. In this email, you want to teach them something and help them feel smarter. And then again, you want to provide another asset, something that either uses or refers to that industry insight you shared and allows your customer to get some sort of a benefit from taking action. Finally, in email number 5, you want to share another success story. But this success story is a little bit different than the one that you showed in email number 2. In email number 2, your success story was really providing a tip and showing a small transformation, something that the client could achieve on their own potentially. In email number 5, your success story needs to showcase a case study of someone who worked with you and saw a great benefit. In this last email of the sequence, this is when you can, for the first time really, put forth your offer. You can say, this client had this experience, I want the same for you, here's how we can make that happen. Now I'm going to caveat this a little bit. Just like we talked about with the complexity of the buyer group and the complexity of the buyer journey, it might be more or less than 5 emails that you need to get to a point where that offer makes sense, where it's the right time to present that offer. A rule of thumb around this is to match it to your sales cycle. So let's say your buyer comes in on email 1 engaging with an awareness level asset. Let's also say that you're sending out an email once a week, which is a pretty typical cadence. What you'll want to do is see how long the average sales cycle is for your product. So let's just say that it takes about a month for one of your leads to be ready to talk to sales. Now that might be different for your product. Every single buyer journey is a little bit different. But in this case, let's say that it takes about a month for your lead to want to talk to a salesperson. That would mean that this is the right sequence because you have 4 weeks worth of content before you offer an opportunity to connect with sales. But if you have a much more complex product and someone is researching it on their own for, a few months, let's say 3 months, well, then you might need 3 times as many email touch points to get to a point where they're actually ready to talk to sales. But I will tell you that that's a pretty sophisticated way to go about doing things. And most companies, even the big ones, aren't always that sophisticated. So it's completely fine to just start out with a 5-touch email sequence and build it from there as you learn more about your customers or as you have the capability. Regardless of how many emails are in your email nurture sequence, the idea is that each email needs to stand on its own to provide value. But it also needs to drive momentum. You are not selling hard here. You're building relationship capital. When I really learned how to implement this well, my clients' email lists went from cold to warm super fast. Replies would come into the emails. People would organically share assets with others, which is always a good sign. And when we finally did get to the point of making an offer via email, it didn't feel like a pivot. It didn't feel salesy or unnatural. It felt like the next step. So let's build out an example 5-part email nurture sequence. One for Olivia, the office manager, and one for Corinne, the COO. So let's start with Olivia. The goal here is to nurture her interest and get her to initiate a quote or a demo. So our first email is going to be, here's your office mood booster checklist, plus a few plant tips. The second is your quick win story, so how plants helped one office reduce stress and boost morale. Touchpoint number 3 is your why plus a little bit of a soft sell, so why I started EcoBloom and how we make offices feel more alive. Touchpoint number 4 is your industry insight, so 3 trends in employee wellness you can start for under $200. And finally is your big win story with an offer CTA. So this office went from meh to wow in 30 days. Want the same? Next, let's take a look at the email sequence for Corinne, who is the COO and Olivia's boss. The goal for Corinne is a little bit different. It's to validate the ROI and to justify the purchase. So email number 1 might be, here's how our clients use greenery to reduce sick days and costs. Email number 2 could be, see how XYZ Tech improved satisfaction scores with 5 new planters. In email number 3, we focus on aesthetics and ROI. Here's the proof. Email number 4, why Fortune 500s are investing in plants in 2026. Email number 5, see what happened when one company tried us for 30 days with no contract. You can do the same, let your team feel the difference. So hopefully what you're seeing here is that email sequences are not just a drip of random content. They are not newsletters overpacked with info that your audience is just going to skim over anyway. And they are not a sale or a product announcement. They are a strategic conversation. By creating parallel but distinct experiences for each persona, you guide both through the buyer journey in a way that speaks to their own mindset, their own goals, and their own needs. Now that can be kind of an intimidating amount of content to create. 10 emails can feel like a lot. I would not blame you if right now you're like, whoa, that's a lot to execute. It is a lot to execute. But there's a good shortcut. Our good friend AI exists today, and that is your other secret weapon for managing all of this complexity. Once you know your buyers and their journey, you can use tools like ChatGPT to scale your marketing efforts. The danger with using ChatGPT is that it doesn't feel authentic to you. It feels more generic. But I made another video that I'll link in the description below that talks about how to train ChatGPT so that it sounds more authentic to you and your voice, and speak directly to your customers. And that can save you a ton of time. So when you combine automation and AI, then that complexity becomes a lot more manageable. So yes, it is a bit of work to set up front, but that work is well worth it because you're essentially hiring a new employee, an employee that can engage with your customers in an authentic way and provide them value without you having to respond to inquiries one-on-one. We covered a lot today, and even my dog is sitting here wanting my attention. So let's go over a quick recap to make sure we remember all of the important parts. Number 1, B2B usually means working with a buyer group, not just a single individual. Number 2, to truly market effectively, you need to match message to moment, aka map your content to the buyer journey. And finally, number 3, to do all of the above without using your mind, you need to implement automated systems and AI to work in the background and help you scale. If you're serious about turning your list into leads, then download my email sequence worksheet. It's a great place to start. And if this video helped, please hit the subscribe button. I have so much more content ready to share to help you make your marketing efforts really shine and get results. You've got this, and I'm cheering you on. Until next time. You gonna say hi? Oh, we got number 2.